Hello, everyone. Hi, and welcome back to the Where You're Planted podcast. My name is Deborah. I'm your host, and I'm super thrilled and excited to be recording another episode of the podcast today. If you're watching on video, which you should, because I do make video episodes, you'll notice that I'm in a sort of different location. I'm actually recording today in my office because I'm in the middle of a move, and the setup that I usually have in my sitting room is sort of all dismantled. So I had to improvise and move to my whatchamacallit office. And honestly, I'm not minding this because I have this like little comfy like reading chair on which I am sat right now and recording this episode. It's a very warm day, and so I'm in shorts and an oversized t-shirt. The fan's blowing, and I'm just trying to have a grand old time. Anyway, you guys, it is August. I can't believe I just said that. That's crazy, isn't it? It's August, and um, I am super late to this, but I had been meaning to do so. We're like more than halfway through the year already, which is, I can't even fathom it. It's insane to me, but it's true and it's real. And I had been meaning to sit down and do like a mid-year reflection. I'm like 2 months late, but better late than never. Um, and something happened earlier this past week that sort of spurred me to finally sit down and take it seriously. I had some issues with my car, a very expensive car repair, and it just sort of reminded me of, I suppose, a certain level of financial incompetence that led me to finance and purchase this car so many years ago when I was in desperate need of a car. And it's just something that I regret 100% right now. And it's just the worst financial mistake of my life, which is probably exaggerating. And honestly, if it's, you know, a car that is not serving me in the way that I hope to, if I can say that so far, that's the worst financial mistake of my life, well, then I guess I'm in sort of decent shape. But anyway, and then it got me into a process of thinking, okay, I need to find a new vehicle, trade in my car. But doing that made me realize that I don't have the financial leverage to get a good deal, to trade in my car and get a good deal and get into a car that I can afford without rolling over some negative equity and just kicking the metaphorical debt can down the road, further down the road. So it just sent me into like a little bit of a mentee B. I'm not even exaggerating. I had a couple rough days. And it was compounded on top of like a difficult rough week as well. Um so all in all, it wasn't a good week, and it just got me thinking. It just snapped me out, I suppose. I suppose it snapped me back to reality, and it's like, what the heck am I doing with my life? I feel unmoored. I feel anchorless, and that's because I've just sort of been living day to day and not thinking about the goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the year, not figuring out how I can like work towards certain goals, and just sort of like doing the same thing that doing the things that I've been familiar with. So anyway, long story short, that episode got me to finally sit down and do a my mid-year reflection again. 2 months late, but I sat down and I wrote everything down in my journal, and it was pages and pages, and it took a very long time to get through. But I figured that that would be what we talk about today, is just me being candid and honest about the goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the year in like very general terms, and how I'm doing and how far I have come toward achieving those goals. So I started off by saying, well, it's August 1st and we're more than halfway into the year. I have been putting off doing this reflection primarily because I know I have not even achieved close to any of the long list of goals I set for myself at the start of the year. That is true. In fact, in some categories, I have either not even started or I have backtracked. It's quite disappointing if I'm being honest. And the other day, I pretty much had a mini mentee bee. I guess it's time to stop being cowardly and face myself, ask where have I failed, my promises to myself, and where have I kept them. I think part of the reason why I've put off doing this reflection is because I know that I have not strived hard enough or worked hard enough toward achieving the goals that I set for myself. I was distracted in a way, and so I was being cowardly, I wasn't being brave, and I didn't want to face the music and face the fact that I haven't really kept any of the promises to myself, any of the promises that I made to myself at the start of the year. This was like a good exercise because it got me to really sit down and reflect on the goals that I set. Because this was like, I set this at the end of like December 31st, 2025, so right before the start of the new year. And I feel like a lot of the things, it's been like so long ago, and because I didn't really check in on those goals, I've forgotten the intent or intention behind a lot of these goals, so that I can't even really comfortably say this is why I set this goal, this is what I was aiming to achieve for some goals. And I think reflecting now, I was probably a bit too ambitious in certain categories and with certain things, just too many goals that I wanted to achieve. And once you have, if you don't have a simplified list, I suppose, that you're working toward, it can get overwhelming. And I think maybe a part of me was also overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I tend to just freeze and not do anything. And I think that's part of what happened here. It's not an excuse. I'm not trying to excuse myself, but I'm just trying to be candid in what I uncovered during my reflections. So, I sorted my goals into 5 broad categories. I had personal, financial, health, relationships, career, and content creation. In my personal goal category, I had 6 goals that I really wanted to focus on. I'm not going to like talk about all of them. I can just sort of broadly talk about them. But I had 6 goals. One of it was to restart volunteering. The other was to complete my 2026 personal curriculum. I wanted to also create and maintain a spiritual practice and ritual. I wanted to reduce passive consumption of others' content. Wanted to travel to Europe. And then I also did have traveling to Boston as a thing that I wanted to do. Now, I can say that Boston I made happen, and just because it was a work conference, so I had to go whether or not I liked it. Everything else, though, I either have not made any progress or made some very minor progress. In terms of restarting volunteering, I had aimed to do this by the start of the second quarter, so by like April. Um, but there was no momentum in that. I think sometime in maybe May or June, I found this volunteer position that I was really, really interested in, but I dragged my feet so much on like applying for the position that by the time I went back to it already closed. And during my reflection, I was trying to like figure out like why I was sort of resistant to restarting volunteering. And it was because I, at any given time, am juggling so many different things between my personal life, between work and career, and between my relationships. And so it felt to me like adding on the layer of volunteering would be another complexity, another priority that I'd have to balance within my already packed schedule. And so an unconscious part of me, maybe a conscious part of me, realized that and was very slow and honestly sabotaging in terms of moving ahead with that. But the point of this goal really was to strengthen my presence and my bond in the community. I wanted to be able to feel like I was given back in whatever way through my time and effort and whatever that might be. But again, just the realities of all the other things that I am trying to balance just made this so difficult. this is still something that I want to try and restart before the end of the year. And so I have recommitted myself toward finding another opportunity that will be manageable with my schedule, because I've made the decision. I think by the time this goes live, I would have probably talked about it, but I've also made the decision to pause uploading on YouTube, because it's one of those content creation platforms that takes the most out of me, requires a lot of filming, a lot of brain space, production, and all of that. And I realized that I wasn't excited for it. I'll talk about this more a little bit when we get to my content creation and career category. But yeah, another thing I had on here was to complete my 2026 personal curriculum. And this was a total wash. The only progress I made was toward I had, like, I think last year I had like sat down and really brainstormed like a plan for every quarter of the year and topics that I really wanted to dive into. And I think this came from like a genuine place, because I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always trying to learn and expand my knowledge about whatever different kinds of topics. That's why I loved school so much. But it's hard to really balance that again with everything that I've got going on. And so I figured that doing this curriculum would be a good way to get at that in a way that was sort of more structured, but not school, right? However, I also feel like I sort of fell prey to the whole curriculum trend that was all the rage last year. And so, yeah, I sort of went with it without really being realistic about how it would work in my life, in my given my schedule and my own personal context. So, I only got as far as buying a book related to World War I, because that's a topic that's always interested me, and I barely made a dent. I don't even think I'm 50 pages in. Anyway, my next thing is to create and maintain a spiritual practice and ritual. And this is one that it's so weird. So back in 2023, 2024, I feel like I had such a solid and faith-based spiritual practice, not religious or anything like that, but just more spiritual. I don't know what happened, but I seem to have lost that discipline along the way. And I'm really trying to find my way back and just figuring out a routine that makes sense for my life with my life situation. Because back in 2023, 2024, I was going to the gym first thing in the morning. And so I was able to insert that practice of presence and connection with source as like one of the first things I do in the morning before getting ready for the gym. But now that I've shifted away from that and I'm no longer going to the gym early in the morning, I sleep in. I suppose I could wake up earlier and do that. And I think that's the plan, is to just build back in that time, even if instead of going to the gym, I'm just getting ready for work. So I'm really trying to make my way back. And part of this goal too was to move my body more intentionally and be more connected and feeling with my body. And I feel like I've sort of made progress with this, because I practice Pilates, mat Pilates, and stretches, and I do all of those through my Runner app because it's good for running, right? But I think there can also be a very spiritual element to it. And so what I'm trying to remind myself whenever I'm engaging in these practices is to just be in my body and to be here and not to wonder and just let my mind go where it wants to go. It's interesting. Since I've like sort of disengaged from this practice, I do feel like I felt somewhat hollow and lost and anchorless without that grounding. So that goes to show that it was meaningful. It was doing something for me then. And you don't know, it's a cliche, but you don't know what you have until you lose it. Now, the next thing that I have here was to reduce passive consumption of others' content. And I've really been trying with this, but I feel like lately it has actually been nagging me even more because I find that I just can't land on watching one person or a couple creators that I really enjoy. I find myself flitting back and forth um, between channels or videos and never really feeling satisfied with any one piece of content. So I think part of me was just very, what's the word? Very unsatisfied, I guess, with what I was getting. And unconsciously, I realized that this is something that I need to take more seriously. And so after my little mentee bee the other day, I just sort of I feel like something shifted and I just no longer have this desire or care to continue taking in content and influence and whatever from other people. So I don't know how long this is gonna last, but I'm here for it. And then the other thing that I had on here is Europe. Europe has been a dream trip for me since like 2024. And it has not happened. Oh my God. And it did not happen this year. And the finances just does not allow, if I'm being plain and simple. And that brings me quite nicely to my other category, which is about my finances. I had 4 goals in this category: to track my expenses weekly, to hit my savings goals in my RSP, emergency fund and sinking fund, and to work toward paying down my car loan. And then to do 2 no spend challenges. In terms of tracking my expenses weekly, I will say that um, sometimes I'm good about tracking my expenses weekly, but sometimes I'm not. But the caveat is that I do track my expenses throughout the month, but I just haven't I've fallen out of the weekly cadence habit. And I was trying to like figure out like why, because again, I think when I was at like my best version of myself in 2023, 2024, I had a Sunday routine of tracking my expenses, sitting down at my desk at my computer, grabbing my mobile banking app, opening it and tracking my expenses. And it was something that I would do every Sunday. So during this reflection, I had to admit to myself that I think the reason why I procrastinate about tracking my expenses is because I'm anxious about my money, and I am being avoidant about my money, especially when, I feel like I've had a particularly expensive week or expensive couple of weeks. I think there's a certain level of shame and fear attached to like opening my bank statement and seeing, the quote unquote damage that I've done, or feeling like, oh, I have to dip into my savings to be able to cover my credit card bills for this month, right? And so, like I said, when I was at my most disciplined, it was part of my Sunday routine to sit down and track my expenses, and this is something that I am hell-bent on bringing back into my routine. Another big thing that I put on here was to hit my savings goals in terms of my RSP, emergency fund, and sinking funds. And so the plan was to grow my RSP and emergency fund by $8,900 and $6,000 respectively. I am very much on track with my RSP, and that's because I I just what's the word? It's automatic essentially, and I force myself to put away the money because I know that by doing so, come tax time next year, I would have reduced my taxable income. And the one thing that I don't ever want to do ever again is have to pay back taxes to the government. So I feel like I'm doing pretty well when it comes to that. And I am on target and on track with this goal. Now, the other one was to save $6,000 into my emergency fund. And I was doing well until I had some pretty big expenses come up. I had some major plumbing expense and a major car expense that have required me to really tap into my emergency fund. So I'm not on track with that goal. In fact, like I said, I have backtracked with that goal. And I'm really trying to reframe my mindset here and practice a little bit of gratitude and sit with reality for a moment, because these were pretty major expenses. Plumbing issue, you always want to address a plumbing issue sooner rather than later so that it does not become a bigger issue. And car issue, I was able to, get my car up and running again. And my reframe in my mind has been that how lucky am I that I have money saved for things like this, and that I don't have to take on debt or put stuff on my credit card that will then, require me paying a higher rate of interest on it. But like, I was able to tap into my savings. And so, yes, it's not ideal that, I am having to spend a lot of my emergency fund and feeling like I have taken steps back, but it's so much better than not having any savings at all and having to rely on credit. And I think as soon as I reframed that in my mind, I felt a little bit better. I still feel a little despondent and disappointed because I feel like some of the expenses that required me to tap into my emergency fund were absolutely frivolous. And it was just a matter of me being undisciplined and overspending when I did not need to. And what I'm not going to do is beat myself up about things that have happened. I like to feel like I'm pragmatic. I wallowed in my own self-pity for a couple of days, but then I was like, okay, wallowing done. What's the plan to get back on track? Are we going to tighten our belts? Are we going to be more mindful in terms of how we spend? And so that's the reframe that I'm taking. It's just the reality is it's just going to take me a lot longer than I would have liked to hit my goal, but I'm going to get there eventually. And when I get there, it's going to feel good. It's going to be worth it. And it would have been because I was disciplined and resilient and I kept on going. In terms of a sinking fund, I really did not like, I just wanted to have a sinking fund where I could just like put extra money every month in, and it came in handy, honestly, because it allowed me to cover expenses during more expensive months. Another goal that I set for myself was to work toward paying down my car loan, and I did not do this. And I think it took me feeling very disillusioned with my vehicle, spending, guys, I have had to take, there's been one issue or the other with my vehicle since I got it. And I've had it for almost 5 years. Like, an issue every year, and it's like not a cheap issue. An average is like $1,500 to $2,000, $2,500. And for some of these issues, my extended warranty provider has been able to cover the issues, but it still required me to put some of my money toward the issues because they don't cover everything. And despite that, it's still been expensive. And so my vehicle, true and true, has been such a liability. And I knew that last year. And that's why I set the goal that you should really try and make a dent, Deb, in paying down what's left of the loan. It's not a ton left anymore, but the way loans work, only a certain amount of your payments go to principal and only a certain amount go to interest. So it still takes a long time, even though it doesn't seem like a giant amount, to pay down what's left. And so I knew that I was getting to the point where I needed to be done and rid of this vehicle. And I set that goal. But I guess a part of me was complacent because my car was running fine. And I would come up with excuses about like, oh, I want to use this money for something else. And my car is fine. I can just continue paying down do my regular payments. It's fine, right? And it took another expensive payment, another expensive repair, and, feeling like I'm screwed when it comes to trying to trade the vehicle in, to just sort of remind me that, dude, this was like a goal that you set for yourself at the beginning of the year. What happened? Get back on it. And so I've come up with a plan of how I'm going to, within like the next 6 months, I'm starting with 6 months to really do two things. Put aside some of my extra money every month toward paying off part of the loan on top of my regular payments, and then setting aside like a down payment fund so that when I'm ready to get a new car, I have money set aside to put up a down payment so that I can reduce my payments every month. As much as like I was really hoping that once I paid off this car, I'd be done, because I don't want to get another car loan. But the reality is my car's a piece of shit. And keeping it instead of getting rid of it and getting a newer, more reliable vehicle um, will cost me more in the long run. And I think it just makes more sense for me to get into another loan, but a more manageable loan with a more reasonable term, and work toward that instead. So yeah. And then in like the money category, the last thing here was to do two no spend challenges. I haven't done. I haven't done it. And it's so much needed. I think my intention was to do two like week-long no spend challenges. Nope, that has not happened. But my plan is to challenge myself to do a month-long no spend challenge, and that will be in October, which I feel like is perfect timing because it's summer's over and we're sort of gearing up to the holidays. So it's like a good time to save money for all the gifts I'll need to buy during the holidays. The next category that I have here is relationships, but I think I'm actually going to skip this because it's quite personal and I don't know. I don't like talking about like my intimate relationship, but it's really was focused on strengthening my friendship and familial bonds and the relationship I have with my partner. I don't want to talk about it, so let's just say those are feeling pretty good too. But again, as with everything, lots of room for improvement. I want to talk about some of my health goals because like I said, I totally forgot that. I skipped that. So one of the goals here was to maintain a consistent workout and movement routine. And I feel like I've been pretty good with this. And I run twice a week, strength train 3 times a week. I do stretching once a week and mat Pilates once a week. And that's been pretty good for me. I really just wanted to move my body every day. And I feel like that's been working well. I also wanted to improve sleep quality, optimization and bedtime routines. I'm still struggling with this, you guys. Like, I I don't know why I struggle so much with my sleep quality and getting like a good night's rest. Um, I'm still working on it, and unfortunately, it's just not going the way that I wanted, but baby steps. Here I have run a half marathon. That did not happen. I have decided that I will run a half marathon next year instead. I also said run at least two 10Ks. I've done one, and maybe I'll do another one in September. I haven't figured out, or maybe October. I haven't decided when yet. It says do mat Pilates weekly for balance and core strength. I've done that. I do that. Develop recovery rituals, stretching, walking, deload weeks, and I feel like I've been able to incorporate that just with like my regular workout plan. Another one here is 10K steps daily. Sometimes I'm actually able to hit this, especially on days that I am either in the office or I go on a run. I hit 10K steps, but on days where I'm working from home and I'm being a lazy bum, I I struggle with that, but that's okay. And then there's another one here that's a little too personal, so we're not going to talk about it. Now let's go to career and content creation. I had 11 goals in this category because really honestly it's like two categories in one. For my career, I think I had two, including maintaining a consistent weekly organization and reflection habit. And I was good with this for like the first little bit, but like once like a busy season at work hit, I sort of fell off of it. And I think I've realized that I'm good with having like a weekly to-do list that allows me to like cross off things and get them done and move stuff over to the following week if I don't get them done. And it would also be like a good way to, at the end of the year, go back and reflect on like what my weeks looked like. But I think what I've realized is that I need to, in the same way that I've developed a personal journaling habit, I need to do the same for my career. So I'm going to start doing like a daily work journal just to debrief like, oh, this is what happened at work today, this was the big thing, this was how I felt, and so on and so forth, that I can review. The point of this actually is to be able to capture wins, capture, you know, me being able to do my core work and core responsibilities and taking on even more, so that at the end of the year when we do our yearly reflection, I have something to write about, because so much happens in the year and it's so easy to forget everything you do. So this is like a good way to stay on top of that. And then another thing here was in terms of leadership practice. So I'm covering for my team lead, my immediate supervisor, while she's on sabbatical. Um, as I record this, I think it's actually she's on sabbatical right now, and it's been a week. Um, and I feel like it's actually been a good week. I've had questions coming from people, and I think it's allowed me to really comfortably to be empowered to make decisions without, having to run it by somebody else, to make decisions, to be able to think through why making a decision and to be able to stand on that decision. And there's something empowering about having the agency to lead and do your work in that way. On the content creation side, I set pretty ambitious goals, and there's nothing wrong with setting ambitious goals. I think it's fine to be a bit delusional, and I was very delusional in this aspect. So I wanted to grow my Instagram for like my podcast and like my lifestyle, whatever, to 500 followers, and I wanted to grow my YouTube followers to 10,000. Neither of that has happened. In fact, my growth on YouTube has been pretty stagnant, and it's fluctuated between loss and growth. And my growth on Instagram has been slow but steady. And despite this, I have, tried to remain as constant and consistent as much as I can, and as much as the realities of my life will allow. And so this brings it back to what I was talking about at the top of this episode. It's like after a lot of thinking, and I suppose a sense of disillusionment, I have decided to pause uploading to YouTube. I've realized that rather than bringing me joy and excitement and feeling like I can tap into my creativity, it doesn't do that anymore, and it feels more like a burden and responsibility. And if I'm being honest with myself, it has truly been adding to this feeling of burnout that I've been battling all year long. So I have one more video planned, and then after that, I think it will be my last for a while. I don't know how long I plan on being gone. It might be a month, it might be 2 months, 6 months. I don't know how long, but that's my plan. I just know that it's the correct choice for my well-being and my health, because I think I want to do all these things, but I'm only one person. And when the honest, unvarnished truth is that none of these things, not podcasting, not Instagram, not YouTube, none of them make me money. The thing that keeps the light on, the fan spinning, that allows me to even have these hobbies is my 9 to 5. The job that keeps my bills paid. And so just have to be realistic about the fact that I cannot kill myself over something that's not yielding any return for me at this point. So, what would I do with some of that time back? I think I'll get more into my hobbies. I'll volunteer, maybe I'll restart. I took a little bit of a break from a book club I was a part of. Maybe I'll rejoin it. And I think I'll create more consistently for Instagram and the podcast. And then speaking of the podcast, one of my goals was to, launch video episodes, and I feel like I've been pretty good with that, and to post twice a month. That I haven't been as consistent. And again, it's just balancing the realities of life, and I try not to beat myself up too much about this. But this year I also launched the Morning Brew, like my mini series, where I just, chat informally about something small, and it's like supposed to be something you listen to in the morning while you're like making your coffee or whatever. Those have been really good, and I think they've been good because they're sort of low effort. I am able to knock out an entire month's worth of the Morning Brew episode in like an hour of just recording, editing, probably even less. So it doesn't require as much production compared to like, an actual podcast episode. Another goal in this category was creating and launching a wellness journal. And I've been so stuck with this. It's an idea that I've had in one form or the other for a long time, and I just haven't really known how to execute on it. And it's still something that I'm really trying to figure out and brainstorm. And I had, set a goal for myself to, create it have the product completed and finalized by like the end of second quarter and launch it by like the end of the third quarter or something. And the truth is, it's not ready. It's not ready because I haven't solidified a vision of who this is supposed to be for, what it's supposed to help people do, and how I can bring it to market. And so I still have a lot of work to do in that regard. And again, it's just one of those things where I know this is something that I need to do. It's on my list of to-dos. It's like a project that I've had on my list, but I have all these other things like that I'm also trying to work on at the same time on top of my real life. Not that this is in my real life, but on top of, having a job, having a relationship, hanging out with friends and all the other things. It's like, where am I going to get the time? That's all the reflection that I have for these goals. And I wrote here that I'm kind of ashamed to say I've barely looked at these goals since I set them. It's no wonder I forgot about them, about some of them, and the intentions driving them. But this reflection was truly a worthwhile exercise. I know what I need to focus on for the rest of the year and what needs to be paused or requires, more thoughtfulness. And I wrote in my journal here that the most important thing, though, is to not beat myself up or shame myself for what I forgot or what got derailed, but rather this is a reminder to practice grace and diligent adherence to routines and habits that will bring me closer to the version of myself I desire to be. Well said, Deb. Well said. This has been a long ass episode, and I am tired of talking. But like I said, worthwhile episode. And yeah, if you guys are still here listening, thank you so much for hanging out until the end of the episode. It was a little bit of a yappy one, but I hate that word yap, but I still use it. It was a little bit of a talky one, a chatty one, but it was nice to sort of share a bit more about. I think some people have the sense, I've heard from friends that I seem like driven and like they wonder how I get everything done. And I think I am a driven and ambitious person, but I think it's nice to peek behind the veil a little bit and show that sometimes I don't do what I intend to do or what I said I will do. And rather than beating myself up for it, I'd rather just learn and move on and figure out how I can do better. That's the moral of the story here. Anyway, I'm done talking now. My throat hurts. But thank you all so much for listening to this episode, for watching the video, and for spending some time with me. If you are a reflective sort of person and you haven't done your mid-year reflection yet, because for some reason or other you're procrastinating because you've been off your goals and you're just off target, let this be your reminder to take a look, to take a peek. You might be surprised at like what you find. Anyway, that's everything I have to share for today. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you next time in another episode. But until then, take care and goodbye.